going to be amazing.
Esto fui yo. No, esto no es mío. Listo. Ahora que te acuerdes de mí. Nos pasamos un poco de tiempo juntos.
Y se me está pensando. Oh, 2018. Cleaning production letters.
Lo busco hasta aquí. ¿Lo tienes ya? Es ahí, pero la naturaleza.
Mais comme tu le sens. C'est un peu plus belle pendant le travail.
Et pas avoir une chose qui
Mais c'est pas obligé de manière. C'est aucune obligation. Là, tu vois, tu peux choisir.
Mais t'as fait sexe.
Ah, non, c'est pas le temps.
n'est pas bon. Yo estoy contento que no encuentro a gente que hace sindicatos y social friends.
Frameworks. Framing. Framing.
Social friends. Frame analysis. Social
When you're ready to start, just tell me, and I'm going to go.
I think I'm ready.
You're ready? Okay.
But maybe we can wait.
Do we have an anonymous crowd?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Like an anonymous ready crowd.
I think Mari and Javier are coming.
All right. Hola. Take a seat.
You need a seat in Syria.
No, I don't need a seat.
Let's wait for Javier.
All right.
Yeah. Amazing.
This is the whole content of my presentation. It's some kind of symbolism art. I hope you will enjoy it.
Actually, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Not thinking about anything.
No. It's contemplative and peaceful.
Anyone sitting here?
Are you?
I mean, okay.
Te va a encantar a Mario cuando venga.
¿Por? Está Mario.
Do something like that. If I do that, okay, so it's like some kind of. Okay, does it do something like that? All right. All right.
Yeah, you need that.
I haven't done a presentation for like some time now, so I'm hoping it will be as fluid as it can be. Yeah, I know. People kept saying that, but you still have teeth. All right. Chris, are you ready? I guess yes. Yeah.
Yes, everything's ready.
He's just trying to show.
Yeah, I'm not trying to buy any time at all. All right. Welcome everyone to this presentation, simply titled "A Mid-Internship Preview of a Lost Engineer Intern That Has Still a Lot to Learn." It works. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Does it work with animations? Okay. For instance, if I do that, oh, all right, I love it. Okay, so a brief summary of what I'm going to talk about. First, what I did and also what I'm planning to do next, because I'm going back to France, but my internship is not over at all. It's supposed to last until September, and so I have some plans, something I want to prepare, and also something I want to talk to you about and ask for your advice. So that is going to be the second part. First, on what I did. First, I'm going to introduce you to someone. This is Corentin. Corentin is an engineering student, and Corentin is also a bit lost, like everyone in the world, I assume. So Corentin, because he's a bit lost, he decided to go to the post-growth innovation lab, and then after that, he's still lost, and now feeling a little bit guilty. But why is it feeling a little bit guilty? We don't know. The only thing we know is that it's okay. Why is Corentin feeling guilty? The title gives it away a little bit. Corentin comes from an engineering world. And what do we ask of engineers? We ask them to produce. That's what people want you to do when you are an engineer. But Corentin is now in something called the academic world. And in the academic world, the game is a little bit different. When we ask you to do something, first you have to learn. And so you start to read things, you start to understand better a topic. Better doesn't mean correctly. And so after that, you still need to learn more. But once you've learned a lot of things, you realize that there is like just this little author that has this like review on something, and maybe I should read it. And so you learn a little more. Once you did that, you realize that you have still to write on, to sit at your computer at some point and write stuff, produce, do some experiment. And so then, only then you start to produce. And that's what people want you to do. But Corentin is coming from an engineering world. And the issue with that is that Corentin believes that this is the only thing he has to do. So this first part of his internship that is supposed to last normally when you're in the academic world for like 1 year or like at least 6 months, Corentin did that in 2 months and felt guilty as hell because he didn't went directly to that part. So that was things that happened at the start of the internship. And yet, Corentin didn't just, Corentin didn't just sat and read. He also worked on some things. He did, and I will stop to say he from now. I will say I worked. Sorry. I was asked by someone called Mario Ponser. I don't know if you know about him, to work on something regarding in parallel to the Prospera project. It's not the Prospera project. It's like some kind of spin-off of the Prospera project. I've been given biggest list of organization and innovation. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, this is a screenshot of the Excel document with a lot of organizations and description of the organization and innovations and sector and stuff. And I was asked to analyze those organizations / innovation, most of the organization, within a post-growth framework. For that, I used this table, that is a 9-dimension table, that tried to highlight some dimensions, some aspects of organization that make them post-growth oriented organization. You have this 9-1, and if you have questions about it, we can talk about that later, but this is just so you have to understand those aspects that I focused on in analysis in my analysis of those organizations. So I reorganized the Excel a little bit in order to, like, this is an engineering thing. I just did some some project management because I was asked to do that in my engineering curriculum, and so now I realize that I'm doing it automatically. But this is not the point. I've also tried to analyze the organization specifically that produced convivial forms of technology. Convivial forms of technology from the definition both of Ivan Illich and also using Andreas Vetter's matrix of convivial technology, which is another matrix, a 5-dimension matrix there, with a complex notion and quite abstract sometimes, to specify and try to frame a little bit better the organization that I was focusing on. So in terms of methodology, the first thing I did was data gathering. I searched info online, on website, on Wikipedia, on articles regarding the organization, and tried to explain how those 9 dimensions with an S relates to this organization. Here you have 2 examples. First is the example of l'atelier paysan. So here, for instance, in intellectual property, you have the sharing of information and open source. Here in ownership governance, it's a cooperative, so democratic and also social cooperative. So explaining like that, the same here with the UK organization, which is called Share Oxford. And after searching the information, I did an analysis, asking myself those questions, how those and what dimensions apply to those organizations. Some of them applied, some of them didn't as much. What were the recurring ones, similarities, the differences, and also the main goal was to try to have a better understanding of how post-growth developed within those organizations. And so I came up with that plan to explain what I discovered. First is the existence of post-growth organization, the imperfection of hybridity, and a conclusion, post-growth being seen as a consequence more than a goal. In regard to the existence of forms of organization, there is a lot. This is just some data in order to prove that there is some data. And look at those are data. We see that there is many different structures, whether it's cooperative, association, companies. I've put NFP for non-profit, but it's a little bit tricky because some companies can be NFPs, some association can also be NFPs, some registered society also some cooperative, and some organizations are just non-profit organization, and that's it. So it's a choice, and we will talk about that in the limits. And also the fact that 55% of the organization who are cooperative may be biased the data a little bit, but we are going to talk about that. And there is also different sectors of activities, mainly IT, but also food. And so a very diversified sectors of activity. But and what were related in those data was the hybridity and imperfection of those organizations regarding post-growth approach of and post-growth analysis of those organizations, which makes sense because, as stated here, organization needs to make concession between capitalist and post-growth considerations simply in order to survive, because we are in capitalist market. So here, for the example of Restart, which is a UK cooperative, they are advocating for self-sufficiency, which goes into the underpinning values dimension, and also culturally specific because they exist within a certain cultural sphere, but still they are profit makings. So some things apply to post-growth, some don't. And also in terms of ownership and governance, there are charitable incorporated organizations, but they are not democratic yet. The organization is very pyramidal. And also to show the hybridity, we realize that some types and forms of organization relate more to some dimension than others. For instance, cooperative will rely a lot on the governance, specifically because of the democratic aspect and horizontal aspect of cooperatives. Association relies a lot on scale, because some of them tend to stay local and produces autonomous antennas. With the example of the low-tech lab, for instance, in France, and charity or social enterprises gave a lot of attention to the social justice and bring forward a special set of values. So you can like form some diagram regarding what dimensions are more used and related to than others. And it's the same also with the sectors, for instance, regarding energy The notion of autonomy and equity relating to values is going to be more important. Resources, and specifically the democratic control of the technology. Also the intellectual property, because a lot of them are sharing knowledge and have a really important open source policy. Regarding the right to repair, resources, and the democratic control over technology, just as a few examples, and the same as food. And we also realize, when we delve a little bit further, that those dimensions different can be shown by different aspects. For instance, when you talk about resources, you can be talking about the democratic control of the technology, but you can also talk about the fact of opposing commodification. And you understand that some organizations tend to rely and to relate more on one aspect of those dimensions than the other. Here, for instance, with the right to repair, and that's the discussion we had on that. Right to repair relates to resources in terms of democratic control, but not so much in terms of opposing commodification. You can have different arguments about that, but it's always like specific cases. And when you see it more generally, oftentimes there is democratic control, but not opposing commodification. The same thing goes for cooperation. With the power dynamics, you have the cooperation, you have a cooperative, sorry. In terms of cooperative, you have cooperation with the local social networks, but you don't have, oftentimes you don't have you don't challenge power relationships, like the standard one. And it brings us to the conclusion to that research, is that post-growth isn't really a goal in itself. It's more of a consequence. That diagram explains it a little bit. You start with people with a similar set of values, and they organize in a convenient fashion. And that organization confronts with those values, which brings to convenient post-growth aspects. And that's why sometimes your organization will go more easily on certain forms of dimensions and not on others. So that's another forms of diagram to explain it. You have core values. For instance, some of them rely on autonomy, social justice, or equity. And that dilutes into how those dimensions then are highlighted and developed within your organization. So that was, and also there is limits to this study, of course. For instance, the organization that I was given were really diversified, but yet when you look at where they come from, it's really Western centered. It's from the farthest away is from Australia, but it's still considered like it's really Western oriented. It's a really Western oriented country, even if there is like question of native people, but still it's really Western oriented. And most of them comes from Europe anyway, or the United States. And also it's non-exhaustive. Also, there is a lack of clear framing, and you can see that with the vast amount of cooperative that there exists in comparison to companies or to association. And so there is an unclear framing of the choice of organization, which, like, as I said, forbid the relevant analysis. Like, you cannot really be sure that your data will be relevant because you're not sure that the data you have are representative of the reality. And also, it's lacking a lot of data. I'm finding things on official website and articles in Wikipedia, but like, for instance, there is no information on how the surplus is managed. Because it's something really that happened on the inside, and you need to talk to people about that. So a better thing would have been to directly call people, go there, and do a real like case study for every study. And also, final point, and then I will go to the second part. I only focused on convivial forms of technology, which is a problem in itself. Yeah, and artifacts specifically, because there is a lot of forms of technology. But the problem is, you never have a full 100% convivial forms of technology. You never produce 100% convivial forms of technology. Like the post-growth dimension, it's always a concession between what you can do and what you cannot. So, for instance, you have biointeraction in your product, but they are not adaptable or accessible. And the same thing goes for appropriateness in comparison to relatedness. If you want more explanations about what those concepts are, I can explain after that. And so what's next now? Because that's what I've been working on. But now, what am I going to do for the next few months? So as we talked about it, Corentin likes convivial technology now. And now also he understands better the structures of domination between tools and people. And what Corentin loves also, Corentin loves democracy, because democracy is really important. He finds democracy really important. But the issue is that engineering is taught, and I will say the sentence as written, is taught in a technocratic way, which may cause in the long run the emergence of a global techno-fascist world, which is not something that you want to have when you like that thing. This is an opinion, but I think people agree in this room. And so that highlights the following question: does something need to be changed in the way engineering is taught? And why not do a PhD about that? That's what Corentin asked. That's why I is asking myself right now. So this is one of the questions I would like to discuss for the rest of this so-called presentation. But also, more specifically regarding the internship, I would like to do a case study for the following few months. The goal is, as I said previously, when you want to analyze something specifically and precisely, you need to go there and talk with people and have a social scientist approach. So the goal I set myself is to have a better understanding of convivial technology specifically, and to see how it's applied, and with an underlying focus on how it's transmitted, how organization educates people on that specific concept, and that will serve as a preparation for the PhD. So now I'm going to stop talking and ask you some question that is going to be a discussion, if you want to have it, on how I should do that. How should I prepare my case study? What should I focus on? What questions should I ask? What method should I ask specifically? I heard about participant observation, for instance, and more generally, do you have any advice for me? And it wasn't that long, actually. No. Okay. So
I can start.
yes.
We already talked about that. I have many questions, and we can after discuss. But the thing is, if I look at the end of the presentation, I think that the question that you raise could be very interesting, but it's not linked to the case study you want to do. Meaning that if you want to study, if you can go on the previous slide, if you want to study how does something need to change in the way engineering is taught, you have to study, if you want to do a case study, how it's taught in engineering school, and maybe to study, and it will be a PhD in education science. Mm-hmm. And you will study pedagogy, you will study, I don't know, what are the underlying structure of engineering school in France, etc. But if you want to study a real practical case study about a company in a low-tech lab, it's another question, and maybe how that is more based in organization science.
It's not really well framed here, because actually the things I wanted to work on my PhD with not really what needs to change in the way engineering is taught. It's more like how do you can teach convivial technology in engineering school and in engineering school, and what does it bring? It's more that. So it relates a little bit more in that context, I think.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so, sir?
No.
All right.
I think that if you want to study how it's taught, but this is my opinion, you have to study how it's taught in engineering school.
Yeah.
Not how it's translated by low-tech lab, etc.
Yeah. Or,
I think there is a confusion in the sense that the case study you have to do is for your internship.
Yeah.
And the PhD is something that he's thinking of. So there are two separate things. And maybe it's a bit confusing
I'm
when
trying-
you present it, no?
yeah, it's
So the case study is not part of his PhD.
Yeah.
Okay.
The
It's not
case
part of
study
it.
is for the internship.
but I'm trying
And
to
the
link
PhD
it some way.
And the PhD idea is something beyond that. But I agree with Nicolas. So if you want to do a PhD in the training engineering, training engineer and education, has to do a lot with pedagogy. So you have to start engaging with the theory of learning and stuff like that.
I started to send some mail with people that work on theory of education.
Yeah, well, there are many different things that you can do, different approaches, and then you have to refine a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, for me, like I think I already told you, it's not a good idea it's not a very good research question. How can we talk to convivial technology? Because convivial technology is quite abstract, I say.
Yeah, no, I
For
mean,
me, it's like the more interesting question can be how you can introduce notion of reflexivity, responsibility in engineering teaching or teaching about technology, or
because
I mean, this is much more interesting. That includes also convivial.
when I present it to people, I'm purposefully staying quite broad in order to, if there is project and also things that exist and demands, I'm not blocking myself while like staying in a centered line. No, it doesn't make sense to say it this way. I'm trying to stay broad in order to apply to different things, like to keep my field of view open for opportunities. Like I know, like this is really general and really like it's. I don't think that I am.
No, I mean, I think you identify a problem. That you are not the only one who identified this problem. There are many people that are identified in the past, and I'm also like I've been in conversation with the governance of the University of Vigo to try to have this conversation with no success at all. But so the point is that you have this problem. Now this problem can be faced and can be addressed in many different ways. No, now this can be the first step of your PhD. Convivial technology is just a way to problematize the social construction of technology and the importance of technology and artifacts in the way we enable or disable democracy. But just one. So in order to get to that, you need to explore what are all possible debates and discourses about what is wrong with the way we use technology and what is wrong with the way we teach how to use technology and how engineering school is being used like a system of reproduction of social relation through the technique. And there is a lot of discussion about that in STS. So for me, you need to formulate your PhD in these terms rather than convivial technology, because otherwise it's quite,
It's too broad or not enough?
No, it's quite naive, It's that you're focused on something that is just one aspect of a bigger debate.
Okay, I see.
A PhD requires to engage in a bigger debate, to be aware of the bigger debates, of the different debates and problems that are raised in these bigger debates, and then be able to focus on specific things within these bigger debates.
I see what.
But not the other way around.
I see what your point is.
Huh?
You answered already, but thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
What was the guy called?
The Elastico something.
Cantan. I like Cantan. I think like Cantan, for what you're telling me, Cantan thinks that he's an engineer, but he isn't really, because I think he's in a process of transitioning.
No.
But he is still like an engineer in the way of thinking sometimes. And I think there is something like my idea is like if you're interested in terms of education, something you could do. Maybe it's not for the PhD, but something you could start doing now. And I think that will do you that will open up maybe things that are already there, but you haven't articulated yet. Is that one of the key ideas of degrowth is decolonizing, right? Is decolonizing the imaginary. And I think what you're doing now is trying to decolonize the engineering imaginary that has been, like is part of your background, your education, or Kantan, not you, sorry. And so maybe what you could be doing in the next few months is to do what is called an autoethnography. So it's basically like the process of observing the process of like doing a self-observation of what it means to decolonize yourself.
All right.
From growth as an engineer. So there are autoethnographic methodologies that you can use, but a lot of it is a reflective process. There is some systematic reflection, so it's not just a person thinking and writing a diary, but there is a lot of that. And I think that will help you a lot to, I think, first of all, doing something valuable in sense of like, you're not going to a university and teaching convivial technology, as Mario said, because that is probably pointless. It will be a subject in a course where everything else is completely different, where a lot of people are not going to be interested or think that this is completely useless. A more interesting process is to start to grapple with this, maybe a fraction of the engineering students community that are having problems similar to yours, or conflicts or tensions in the way engineering is taught. Frame it as a process of decolonizing your mind or your identity as an engineer. But before you ask a specific question, maybe just this very small autoethnographic project of 4 months of observing yourself as part of the lab, but also as part of your internship, wherever you do that. But take that as data.
Yeah, okay.
And do it systematically, knowing that there are ways of doing that. And think about it that what you are doing is itself an interesting topic. I don't know, just a suggestion.
I didn't know that such thing existed, so yeah, that's cool.
So you don't need to observe others.
Yeah.
Sometimes you also can be yourself as someone who is participating in this decolonizing project.
I'm thinking about how I will like sell that to my engineering school. Like, okay, I did something. Okay, but it looks like I sat and thought and think about myself, but it's more complicated than that. But yeah, that's really interesting.
I think what you will find through this is like a better way of articulating what are the actual issues that you're dealing with. So it's not like this is the outcome, but this is one of the outcomes of what you're doing. And it's not the same to be reflective in the way you are, which I think there is a lot of things I could ask about how much engineering is in the way you present it.
Yeah, no, that's overly simplified.
Once you have a methodology in terms of how to do this observation and how to link it maybe to these concerns about decolonizing, I think these issues will become a lot clearer to you.
Okay.
And from them, you can ask a better question.
All right, okay, I understand.
I think.
All right.
There is to jump on what Javier said, because I find it very interesting this approach. There's a book of Bourdieu that is called Esquisse pour une auto-analyse.
All right.
It can be a starting point.
Okay, cool.
To reflect on that.
Okay.
But it means that you are part of the data. And your process of decolonizing from sub-mecha to de-mecha, de-mecha, it can be like a process that you can
and also maybe the framing it to your teacher at the engineering school could be like another way to reflect on how to do that.
All right.
Even what you just said now, how can I sell that? to my engineer. Like, you know, there is already a lot of things going on there.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, that's the issue. I mean, like I'm using that word specifically because that's, yeah, I realize not that this is because this is how I've been taught. Yeah, okay, I see. That's a relevant point.
Also reflecting why you're using flip-flop under the rain for the walking line.
Because it wasn't supposed to rain at that point. And for the comical effect, because why not? Because everything is wrong in that picture. That's why I like it. Everything is wrong. Like, yeah, it's for, anyway. Go in the rain.
Because I think part of the problem is what you're raising. Is like, you know, we don't even know how to intervene in engineering schools.
Yeah.
Because we think that the only problem is that the curricula is wrong. But that is this is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I think you could look, if you more than your technology, like a side project or something, that how social science is introduced in engineering programs, because there's literature about that.
Okay. How social science is introduced to engineering programs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I'm using controversy mapping, and they introduced that in engineering programs.
Yeah.
And they got like big projects for doing that. So there's also cases, and they are in the 90s, start of the 2000s.
Okay. All right.
And I don't know, well, I think you live in soon. I don't know if you ever contacted engineers and fronteras. They're like a group of engineers. Some of them dropped engineering as field. Others remain being an engineer, and they're very much trying to create alternative ways of doing engineering.
Okay.
So maybe
this is a.
I think
an NGO.
It's an NGO.
Yeah.
If you want contact with them, I can give you.
All right. Okay. It's is it wait.
Yeah, it was on your slides.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it's engineering sin fronteras. See. Tuk. Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, they seem cool. Yeah. Okay. Good. Do you have any more questions? And that doesn't work.
Well, I have another thing, but
Yeah.
we can maybe discuss later on, because you said that you took choices and decisions where you categorized the kind of organizations
Yes.
in like non-for-profits and all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's very nice that you did that. It's
Yeah.
also very hard because you're working with data from like different countries. However, maybe it would be interesting for you, if you want to do it, to look at the European legislation on social and solidarity economy, where they come up with different categories.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing that the French and Spanish legislations might differ.
In UK also, and sometimes we talked about it a little bit. Like you have to compare things that has a radical, like absolutely different names and legislations. So yeah, for instance, the concept of community exists in Spain, but it's not the same in France and doesn't apply in European Union. So yeah.
Well, I think that this can be an outcome of your work as well. Try to realize all the limits of comparing different kinds of.
Yeah. But that's why it was a little bit difficult to work with and to produce data with the DXL, because it was just a list, and then you.
What is the takeout for you of trying to do that? Like, what would you say is the, like, what do you get from it? Like, it is impossible to do?
No.
That it is like in terms of how we think about post-growth organizations, like what is the, like.
The takeout, there's a lot. The first 2 months is a little short to do something like that. I think, like even like there was some organization that you hadn't any time to like look into. So the takeouts, it's really interesting to understand how many different approach there is and how different things, and because it's always trying to work within a competitive structure, and so you have to come up with ideas, and so every time it's people coming with the different idea and different approach to try to go into something a little bit more socially good, socially benevolent, or more equitable. And so it's really hard to compare, because only to talk about the sectors, there is so many things that I've simplified, because it's never okay, they produce goods or they sell things. It's always, okay, so our concept is you go to a place and then you can do and share things with people, and then a small fee for that, but it's not you don't really have to do it. That's for one case, and the other one is, okay, you go buy a bike to other cities, and then so it's always so many different things that it's really hard to compare them, and to do statistics, because this is when does the food delivery stops and the IT starts? It's really blurry. I don't know if it answers your question, because there is a lot to say after your question.
And do you think that it makes sense to try to categorize post-growth organizations?
No, I mean,
why or do you think we should maybe is it okay to have a soft criteria that is interpretative and we can, or would you prefer to have
that's
more not what you prefer,
No,
what do you think would be more useful?
In the topic of decolonizing itself, I don't know if you noticed, but I come from an engineering background, and there is this idea of standardizing things and making things go in some categories and being really clear with the limits of what you are doing, which doesn't apply here for most part of post-growth organization. And so naturally, I would tend to say, okay, it's important to standardize things and have a clear understanding of a pathway. For instance, okay, you think about, okay, we need to stop capitalism. How do we do it? I would like to say, okay, there is a clear path with clear steps and a clear structure on what we are going to do, and an agenda, okay, this date we do that, and this one we do that, and in the end we get rid of capitalism. And I would love for it to be a possibility. And I think I would love, I'm hoping for it to be a possibility, because I also come from an engineering background where those kind of thinkings apply. But here, this is actually, it's quite naive to think of it this way. And it's really more complicated to have a clear path and a clear framing, and because it's people doing things as they can, and it's just people. It's just most of the time it's just people doing stuff and trying to.
This is the definition of engineers. I disagree with your over-characterization of engineers. I mean, engineers as well. And the first, I remember the first things that they taught us was that engineers are not looking for perfection, but also always for compromise. So the engineers is somebody who is prepared to be flexible and to change. You're not supposed to have a plan. So
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you're very idealized, a very extreme way of.
I'm not saying that engineering are strict and have a strict way of thinking.
No.
They have a strict way of thinking.
The point is, engineering is the hybridity, imperfection, and flexibility is the real things of engineering. It's not having a plan. It's always having a contingency plan.
Yeah.
This is what engineering is about.
Having a contingency.
It's not about, okay, we are going to destroy capitalism, we do it in step 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, but even if there is a contingency plan, it's still having a plan.
Yeah. So my apart from jokes now, my suggestion, another suggestion that maybe you can accept or not, is try to not be essentialist. Because when you talk about, okay, this is engineers, and engineers can lead to techno-fascism or whatever.
Yeah.
Seems that you are yourself, you are putting the engineering category in a box, and I think it's
no, it's more complicated than that.
It's much more complicated. There are different ways of seeing engineering and engineering works.
Yeah.
just consider that, for example, in English, engineering is not the same that in Spanish or Italian. Yeah, they are more like technician, and technician are people that basically are improvising all the time. Now, this is the engineering means in like the electric engineer, electricista, for example. UK, they use the engineering for this stuff. So don't essentialize so don't use an essentialist framework for engineering. Engineering is many different things. It's not just one people that thinks that, like, for example, most of people that I know that have degrees in engineering, they are people like me. They are concerned about social impact and the human aspects of their work. So they are not like people completely alienated that are just looking at productivity and efficiency.
No, of course not.
And I'm pretty sure that if you go to any of your engineering department in your school and you ask people, they will have similar concerns. So my suggestion is try to see the complexity in this. Don't create categories and say, okay, engineering needs to completely change because they have no criteria of social science. And then I know France and Italy and many other places are full of programs in engineers that include in very unperfected way social science aspects. In some cases in a very clumsy way, but so there are already a lot of experiments in. So for me, you have to approach this classification of post-colonial organization in the same way you have to approach the whole idea of decolonialized engineering. So it's not like black and white, and yet you need to take this body of knowledge and then you have to totally decolonize because they are completely co-opted by the dark force, and then you have to bring to the good side of history. You know, it's not like that.
Yeah, of course not.
I think you can learn a lot from feminist thinking about that. Because feminists at some point, like, they thought a lot about identity. I think they thought a lot about identity and like, you know, what it means, like what gender is, how gender is constructed. In the same way, like we are thinking about engineering as an identity, has clear boundaries. But then, of course, came all the people who started to talk about queer identities that don't fit, like they are not like either one or the other, that they are actually like destabilizing binaries between like. And I also think, but this doesn't deny that there is a hegemonic way of understanding engineering. But this hegemonic way of understanding engineering, be careful not to end up reproducing it by assuming it and thinking like those who don't fit that are not engineers. Maybe like, you know, in the same way that people started to think about gender as something which is not like either or, and things are maybe more fluid. I think there is something to learn. Maybe you don't need to read like all the stuff about purpose, but maybe there is something to learn about in terms of how, you know, feminist thinkers started to think about gender as a more complicated identity, maybe more fluid, maybe more boundaries that are more fuzzy. And then like that can help you maybe think about engineering without, of course, because I agree with you, there is a clearly homogeneous way, but
you
know,
it's very interesting to think about the identity of engineers, because I tend to see it as the way it is today, but it doesn't. The identity of engineers has changed in times, and today is defined in some way. I believe. Tell me if you think I'm wrong, but it's defined as someone that is like someone that is able to solve stuff and to solve problems, giving him like some kind of expertise in the domain of problem solving. And this imply in some way, I believe, this notion of verticality. There is people that like are taught to solve things and the other people. And so regarding convivial technology, I think there is like this thing of, we want people to be horizontal, and the engineering as of today is people being able to solve problems, even if they do it in a like improvised way. It's still.
Yeah, but look at the open source. The open source movement, which is probably the biggest participatory movements in the history of technology. It didn't emerge in the social science of collective anarchist groups. They emerged in engineering, software engineering. So why assume that these people they were like train as usual engineers in this techno-fascist system that you.
No, I don't say the system today.
It's a caricature, but I'm saying that it's more complicated. It's more complicated than that. They were trained as a classical engineer, and they came up with something that is completely like super, like revolutionary in the sense that knowledge is produced. And then there is a lot of discussion about the expert who is entitled to speak and so on. But this is for your PhD. If you get a PhD, then you can start reading all this stuff. But yeah, so keep it complex and keep it fussy.
Yeah. Fussy and complex?
Fussy and complex.
Fussy, you said. I said to say fussy, okay.
Fuzzy,
okay.
fuzzy.
Fuzzy, okay. All right.
No?
So, yeah, I do agree. Right.
And good work, by the way. Well, no one like. I think we ended up like.
Right. Okay. No. I mean, like when you have not a clear understanding of the things and you are struggling with concepts, like new concepts, and also you have to decolonize things in the same way. You tend to want to socialize things because you. And today I'm lacking like clear, not pillars, but like I'm lacking a clear understanding. No, what's the word?
Yeah, that's fine. When you are convinced, totally convinced on something, it means that you are wrong. So you are, I think you are on the right track.
Yeah.
No worry, it doesn't get better after the PhD. Gets actually.
I know.
So,
It's going to be so much fun.
And the society.
You don't know that.
All right.
But I think you are the right person to do something like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
And also like keep his passion and like willingness to change. It's
All right.
really.
I mean it.
That's nice. All right. Do we go in and eat stuff?
Yeah, I need to buy something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, going to ask you a favor. Maybe, I don't know, you can help me. Can you share organizations in the list that are connected to repair?
Yeah, of course.
Like when you can. I know you have other things to do.
I can actually share the documents. I can
Like,
share the
but
Excel.
because you know that, like what is in there already. Like maybe like are there many organizations that are relevant to repair? Or...
There is a lot of them that are more or less linked to repair. Does sharing objects relate to repair? Because sometimes there are some, like Sherry Oxford, for instance, they say, okay, you can share things, and if you want to help repair them, you can, but it's not directly.
Yeah, because I saw that one, which is this French cooperative that teaches the farmers that repair the technology. I don't know, things like that. Like I would love if you have some nice examples.
Okay, yeah, I can.
Whenever you have time, don't rush it.
All right,
because I know you're doing other things, but I will be very interested to